I titled this week's post Giddy partially because it kind of makes me smile looking at this picture, but mostly because this dragonfly looks like he's smiling. You can't see it too well in the preview that you, or the version that you see on the Weekly 50 website, but if you click through on the picture and go to Flickr and download the original or just look at the original, it looks like some sort of weird cartoon where this dragonfly has this massive grin on his face, and I don't know what he's actually thinking, but man, it sure is weird to see it, this dragonfly with these huge eyes on each side and this huge grin, and I don't know, it looks like he's having fun, and it makes me smile. So I titled the post Giddy, and I took this when I was on vacation with my family and my brother Phil. So Phil, if you're listening, thanks for a cool bug hunting trip, I guess is what you could call it. It was our annual family vacation in Milford Lake, Kansas, and Phil came up to me and he says, "Hey, how about we go bug hunting?" And we grabbed our cameras. He had his 55 to 200 millimeter lens and a set of close-up filters. I had my 50 millimeter lens on my D7100 and a set of close-up filters. And I said, sure, let's go. So we walked around and left the kids at the beach for a little while with Grandma and Grandpa, and we kind of walked around and looked for bugs. It was a little difficult for me because using a 10 millimeter or a plus 10 filter on a 50 millimeter lens means you got to get super duper close to whatever you're photographing. And it was hard to do that with insects because they would just run the other way. But I found this. It was either me or Phil. I can't remember if Phil found this. I'm going to give credit to him anyway. Phil, thanks for finding this dragonfly. He found this dragonfly sitting here on the stalk of, I don't know, grass or something. He says, hey, you got to check this out. He took a few photos, and I came over, and amazingly enough, this guy didn't move. He kind of sat there still, and I was able to get really close. And if you picture this massive 50 millimeter lens next to this tiny little dragonfly, I would be freaked out of my mind if I were this dragonfly, and yet he is just sitting there with this, what I interpret as a big old goofy grin on his face. Maybe in dragonfly parlance, this actually is really frightened. I don't know. But I took a few shots, and normally, I've learned when I'm using my close-up filters, I generally use manual focus because it can be so tricky for the autofocus to get exactly the focus I'm looking for. But here I didn't. I also normally use the focus and recompose with the back button. I didn't. I set it to, well, I still use the back button. And normally I have of 51 available AF points in my D7100. I select 11 of them because they're a little more spread out, so it allows me to get across the frame really quick, and I focus and then I recompose, or I put it on the mode where I can select one of 11 points and then focus on that one and then recompose. But here I set it on all to use all 51 points so I could get precisely the autofocus motor to use the specific AF point that was right on his eye, and I didn't have to recompose anything, because when you recompose, when you're shooting so close, the depth of field is so crazy thin that moving the camera around just a little bit will cause a massive shift in what is actually in focus. So anyway, I'm sitting next to this guy, and I think I was literally sitting or kneeling on the ground, and I had worked my way in among some of the grass and got a few shots off. And then I think, if I remember right, he took off, and maybe there were some others too. But it was a cool little experience, and it kind of made me wish for a longer lens, although I do have plans and hopes for a longer lens, for a telephoto lens. No disrespect to the 50, but it would be fun to get some photos like this from a little farther back without disturbing things too much or getting so close. Also, if you click through this one and go to the Flickr gallery, you'll see a second dragonfly picture. It's a blue dragonfly, and I like the colors in that second one a little better, but it doesn't have the expression that this guy has, this massive goofy grin. So anyway, I think my lesson or my takeaway from this, it continues to be an exploration of how I can use these close-up filters as well as how to position myself. I really wanted an angle here that showed the full body of the dragonfly and surrounding context. I shot at f8 to get a sharp photo but not too narrow of a depth of field, and I could have stood up and looked down, but then I wouldn't have got this expression. So to me, the key to this photo, or what makes it work in my mind, is the angle at which it's taken, because I really feel like I can see the dragonfly's face and the context surrounding it. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Dragonfly, and thank you for listening to this little broadcast here.